I don't want to die, but I am dying. These are the infamous words of Brittany Maynard, a 29-year-old cancer patient who had an aggressive form of brain cancer, who had to move states in order to gain the right to die with dignity. I've done a lot of research on this topic, and according to deathwithdignity.org, 6 states in the United States, as well as the District of Columbia, have a Death with Dignity statute, and 23 states are considering it this session. I believe that terminally ill patients have the right to die with dignity. My arguments for this are that euthanasia, or the difference in euthanasia versus physician-assisted suicide, other fundamental rights, and life support. First, let's talk about why people are against physician-assisted suicide because of its tie to euthanasia. Euthanasia is wrong, and there's no doubt about that. But physician-assisted suicide is different. The main difference in the two is that with physician-assisted suicide, patients are in complete control. Doctors are not responsible for any part of it because they have all these safeguards set into place where the patient knows their options, they know what they're doing, and they physically have to administer it themselves. While with euthanasia, they don't have to tell them other options, they don't have to give them all this other information, and it is at the hands of a doctor physically injecting a lethal medication into them and killing them. With physician-assisted suicide, it protects patients from the inability to change their mind at the last minute. Because if they're the ones taking the pills, they can just choose not to if that's what they decide. Oregon has the best example of this act because they've had it for the longest amount of time. Since 1997, Oregon has had their Death with Dignity Act. And according to John Westfield in the Journal of Loss and Trauma, Oregon's Death with Dignity Act has many safeguards to protect against abuse of the law, including that they must be 18 years or older, Oregon residents, deemed capable of making healthcare decisions, and diagnosed with an illness with a life expectancy of 6 months or less. If they qualify for all of that, they also have to go through many more steps in order to actually be administered the prescription. These safeguards protect against the abuse that people are so afraid of. And if they're all in place, if all those states, including California that just passed this new act with almost the same safeguards, then there won't be any abuse, and then there's no problem. Next, let's talk about other fundamental rights and why physician-assisted suicide is not a fundamental right. According to a law review by Melissa Legault, physician-assisted suicide is as much a fundamental right as abortion, same-sex marriage, and withdrawal of life support because it also promotes autonomy, dignity, and personal and intimate decisions that were used as reasons for the other laws. Autonomy's definition is the respect for an individual's right to self-determination. If the other fundamental rights, such as abortion and same-sex marriage, were passed because they promoted autonomy, then how is physician-assisted suicide not also a fundamental right? How does abortion promote autonomy any more than physician-assisted suicide? How is there a more intimate decision than how you're going to die? Especially if it gives you the right to die with the dignity that you deserve. Next, let's talk about the constitutional right to withdraw life support. Individuals have had a constitutional right to refuse medical treatment since the 1990s. In the Journal of Legal Medicine, Benjamin Shabito states that a court case in 1990 ruled that patients have a fundamental right to refuse medical treatment, even if that means it will lead to the patient's death. How can they say that you can choose to say no to medication in order to die, but you can't say yes to medication in order to die? What is the big difference in dying without treatment or dying with treatment? Except that both of them give you the option to die with dignity. Both of them give you the option to not suffer for long periods of time. So why is one a fundamental right and the other isn't? The Cruzan case in the 90s is what recognized a liberty interest in hastening one's own death. But Glucksberg versus Washington spoke about the same thing, but one of them passed and one of them didn't. Patients have the right to say no, but they don't have the right to say yes. Thank you for listening. And as I come to the end of my speech, I hope that I have opened your eyes. I hope that I have shown you the difference in euthanasia versus physician-assisted suicide. The not so difference in the fundamental rights that we have passed. And the fact that life support, the withdrawal of life support, is no different than physician-assisted suicide. And when it's your turn to vote, I hope you'll consider the terminally ill patients who are suffering and dying without their dignity.